Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen, and with us for our program today, Assemblyman Bob Oaks. Bob Oaks represents the 130th Assembly District. The 130th District includes the counties of Wayne, Oswego, and Cayuga. We want to thank you folks all throughout the district for joining us today. Bob Oaks, always a pleasure.
Nice to be here, Mike.
Nice to see you.
You know, there's a song, I'll be with you in apple blossom time. The apple blossoms are out in full glory out in the Wayne County and a little bit of Oswego and Cayuga that I represent. So a very nice time.
It's pretty.
It is.
Fields and fields of apple trees.
Or orchards and orchards, as we like to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Fields didn't sound right when I said it. Well, and I know better, too. It's not like we don't have apple trees here in the Capital District or anything.
Very, very true. It's just we have a lot more of them.
And they're prettier.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. So Bob Oaks is here to let us know what's going on not only in the 130th Assembly District, but also to let you folks in the district know what's going on here at the state capitol. And it's an interesting time. We've got more of this corruption business that we need to talk with you about. But also, let's start with an effort to create a new law in the state to protect people. And it's one of those laws that has taken on a person's name, Brittany's Law. And I'll ask you to start us off by telling us a little bit about the history here and where the idea for the law came from.
Sure. Actually, we just talked about the region around Lake Ontario, Finger Lakes region. Actually, Brittany Passalacqua was a 12-year-old girl living in Geneva, New York. And her mom was dating a guy and ended up, the guy started living with the two of them. He had an assault in his background and actually spent some time in prison. He told Brittany's mom that, I was in a bar, guy was, I don't know the exact issues around it, but in essence, he was being either provoked, hitting on a woman, and so I stood up for her and got into a fight. I hurt him, and I ended up being convicted, spent time in jail. She actually looked at his record, which said, as he said, an assault. He spent 2.5 years in prison. What he didn't tell her was his own child, he physically hurt, I think throwing her against the wall, whatever. And because of that, spent time in jail. And so she unknowingly invited this person into her home. He had a violent outburst. And Brittany, actually seeing her mom being physically beaten, inserted herself trying to stop him. And it ended up that both of them were killed. And Dale Driscoll, the grandmother of Brittany, has been a voice in saying if only she had known more, she wouldn't have done this or might not have done this. And shouldn't we, like we have a Megan's Law in New York State, which says for sex offenses, someone has to register, and you can tell in your apartment building or in your neighborhood there's someone who's committed these offenses before. I take caution because of that. And really that's what Brittany's law would do. Dale Driscoll is someone who used to live in Geneva, now actually lives in Macedon in my district. So these are people in our region of this state. Also, as a part of a news conference yesterday, there was another individual out of Allegheny County, Cuba, New York, where a similar situation happened. This time it was just the woman dating the guy. Interestingly, though, the guy used the same story of why he was in jail in a bar fight, defending somebody, and it was not that at all. It was that he was in jail because he had done physical harm to someone else he had dated in the past.
So domestic violence.
So the Senate passed yesterday Domestic Violence Prevention Act, which would, as a part of that, if you have violent history, that is something that would be public, accessible, able to find out, and so that people can make some decisions of, do I want to enter a relationship with someone with a violent past?
Would this create, you're kind of paralleled it with the sexual offender situation. Does it create the same kind of a registry where people would have to, if they were moving into a community, have to?
Actually, there are provisions in that would require where you are living and whatever, but it's less, this is more on the side, if you think about it, more on the side of someone entering a relationship, domestic violence, and so that's less of an issue for, I think, the community as a whole. It's more about me being able to check, or a person who's thinking about entering a relationship with someone, thinking about, should I do this or not? Can I check? And this would be a registry where you could go in and check that.
And get the real story.
Get the real story.
Let's take a look at what Bob Oaks said at that press conference with the members of the New York State Senate, and we'll be back with more of today's Assembly calendar.
Thank you, Senator Nozzolio. I'm Assemblyman Bob Oaks, and Dale Driscoll now is a constituent of mine, and although our discussions have been short, as Senator Nozzolio said, Assembly Republican Leader Brian Kolb has been a champion of this bill for years. Have spoken with Assemblyman Giglio and myself, and we've been supporters of this bill. But this year, just a few weeks ago, the Assembly had a day where we passed a number of bills related to domestic violence. And although those bills were all worthy, not among those was this law, the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. And it was at that time that really I became more, I guess I would say, engaged in this issue. We started through my office, petition drive. We've focused more on this bill, because how can we do just small things toward trying to prevent domestic violence when there is this large piece of the puzzle of strengthening our laws in New York State that was not included in the Assembly. So I hope with Assemblywoman Gunther's support, certainly Assemblyman Kolb, Assemblyman Giglio, and myself, that this is the year that finally this bill can pass the Assembly.
So the Senate has passed it. They passed it, in fact, just yesterday. Where does it stand in the Assembly?
Right now it is still in committee. I alluded to Assemblywoman Gunther. She's from the Catskill region area. She is a majority sponsor of this bill in the New York State Assembly. She took that bill, actually, Assemblyman Brian Kolb, who is the leader of the Assembly minority, originally sponsored that bill. And then he, in talking with Assemblywoman Gunther, decided to get it to a majority member, give ourselves a better chance perhaps of having this become law in New York State. As I mentioned, though, in the clip, just a couple of weeks ago, we sat and did a series of bills to strengthen protections for domestic violence. This bill, I think, would have been the strongest of all those, and yet it was not considered. But it's a new day. This bill has passed the Senate, I think, since 2011. This event with Brittany happened in 2009. There have been other incidents, obviously. It is a hope that with a new Speaker of the Assembly, that this year really could be the year that this is considered. And so we're hoping that between now and the end of June, this is one of the key bills that can become law in New York State.
Well, the importance about having a press event like what you took part in yesterday and having a discussion like we're doing right here on the show right now. We've said it over and over again. The best way to get things done is to have an informed electorate. And that's what we're trying to do here by talking about this kind of issue as it makes its way. And I know you've reached out on the internet even to try to bring this to people and let them know not only that the issue exists, but to get them to be proactive about supporting it.
Absolutely, and we've had literally hundreds of people in just a couple of weeks send in their support for this. And doing this press conference, of course, with Senator Nozzolio and Senator Young, among others, having the grandmothers there, Dale Driscoll, as I mentioned, plus Brittany's other grandma who lives in Geneva, and then having another couple, parents of another woman who really suffered from the same situation. It's powerful. And what our responsibility as legislators is obviously it's in fiscal areas, it's being responsive to our constituents and whatever. But if government has any responsibility, it's also about safety and how do we protect people. And we can't keep every situation from happening. Government can't do that. But when there's an opportunity for law to help people make better informed decisions and ones that can keep them hopefully more safe, I think this is a type of law that we need to move forward with in New York State.
All right, and we'll be continuing to follow this here and see if the Assembly takes it up in really what's just the final few weeks of the 2015 legislative session. With that said, we've let time kind of get away from us here, and I wanted to speak to you again about the corruption issues facing this New York State legislature. We started the year with corruption charges against the Assembly's Speaker, the number one guy in the Assembly. Well, now in this past week, we've seen the very same situation in the New York State Senate. Charges of corruption against the Senate's Majority Leader, the number one guy in the New York State Senate. That's two legislative leaders who have had to resign their leadership position because of charges that they used their position for personal gain. It's stunning. And that's just the leadership. I think somebody's compiled the numbers and said since the year 2000, which is 15 years ago, there have been 30 state legislators who have been charged, indicted, or convicted or sentenced on various things. That's an average of 2 a year. This year, the 2 happened to be, and there have been more that have been dealt with. My point being, is the legislature going to look at itself and try to do something, or is it for outside forces, or is it just a matter of electing the right people?
I think it's a combination of all of those. One, it's calling on legislators to determine who they're going to be as a legislator. It's calling on the electorate to make sure they demand certain things of their legislature, but it's also the system within itself. We have a system that's driven by top-heavy leadership. And in both the cases of Speaker Silver and Majority Leader Skelos, both of those situations seem to me they happened over years of being in their positions for quite a while, where the system they were able to kind of manipulate. And part of that is, we've talked about it, 3 men in a room situation. You make key decisions about the state, where money's going, some of the laws that are going to be considered. We need more eyes, more people in the room. You can't put 213 legislators and the governor and all in one room to negotiate that out, but you can have greater perspective involved. And I think it's affected the quality of legislation in the state. I don't think it's been done well, whether it's the SAFE Act or other things. I think it's affected the way and the quality of how we spend our money in the state. New York State has problems, and we need to address them. And we've done some things to reach that way, but we haven't gone to the level that's going to really make the difference yet.
It's an interesting discussion, but I'm out of time. We'll pick this up in our next program. Bob Oaks, as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you, folks, too, for spending your time. We'll hope to see you soon for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.